07722 33344. And we're going to start with founder of Chelsea TV, Fan TV, I beg your pardon. That's Alex Harris. Alex, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us. It was unacceptable, surely, wasn't it?
Good morning, guys. Good morning.
Morning, Alex.
I travelled to Brighton yesterday. I've been staying in an Airbnb. I'm still there, so apologies. I can't have my camera on.
But not a problem.
I don't think you'd want to see my face after what I've been through yesterday. That was. I mean, to be honest, we're just used to it at this point. I'm numb to it. I was at the United game the other day,
Yep.
and we're all the same group that we go every week. And, you know, the truth is we concede the goal and it's just like, yeah, sorry, what were you saying, mate? Ignore that. You know, that's just a distraction from what we were talking about. The football is secondary. You know, if you're going to Chelsea now for enjoyment, you're not going for the football. And, I mean, the abuse that the players and Liam Rossigna got after the match as well, I want to say it's fully deserved. You know, anyone that criticises fans venting out their frustration after the game, you have to appreciate how much money, how much time, how much sacrifice these fans, these away fans especially, are putting into this team. And they're just getting nothing back. I didn't even realise it was that bad, that it's been over 100 years since we've gone on such a bad run. I mean, that just, I mean, I've learned something there myself, but it seems like we can't get worse, and then we find a way to do it.
Alex, look, massive game at the weekend, huge game.
It's a huge game for Leeds. You know, let's not sit here and act like Chelsea are gonna run, you know, as much as Leeds. Let's not sit here and act like Chelsea are going to take this game as seriously as Leeds. This game means nothing to these players. This game means nothing to the ownership. Why am I saying that? Because it means Champions League is all they care about. If you win the FA Cup, you get Europa League. And all Clearlake want is money. We don't even have a front of shirt sponsor, and then they talk about prioritising Champions League football. Like, Leeds are going to batter us. I've said this already. I've got Leeds fans that have reached out to me and they've said, Alex, can you help me get a ticket? I said, I'll be honest, guys, there's a lot of demand from you, but you could probably quite easily get one in the Chelsea end if you want. We haven't even sold out our allocation. No, I mean, I'm not having this that we can seriously hype up this Leeds game. We've lost 3-0 to Brighton. We lost to United. We lost 3-0 against City. We lost 3-0 against Everton. We lost comfortably against Newcastle. PSG smashed us. Not to mention, if you look at our record against Leeds this season, we haven't even beaten them. Got smashed away and only got a point at home. So I'm not really hyping up this game. I think any Chelsea fan who's actually been watching us, I think that's a guaranteed loss. And I don't even think that's a controversial statement. I mean, 5 years ago it would have been, but this is unfortunately who we are now. We're not Chelsea. We're CFC London. We're Accountancy FC. We're Balance the Books FC. And, you know, it's a really, really sad sight, but I mean, we can't say it hasn't been coming. You know, we've got incompetent people running this club and they don't seem to learn from their mistakes. Ed Barley's come out and he said, we're going to try and change things. As if he's speaking to the fan base. He's not speaking to us. He's speaking to his investors. We're not even owned by individuals. We're owned by an institution. And maybe a couple of years ago, I would have believed what he was saying. They've spent all of their money, guys. What we have to understand is that when Chelsea was bought, money was borrowed, okay? 900 million was paid for on Bowley's side. 300 from Bowley, 300 million from Wiss, 300 from Mark Walter. The rest of that money was from Clearlake's fund. So that's other people's money. Then there was a commitment of 1.7 billion to spend. That money was also borrowed. They took 750 million from the banks in America, JP Morgan and Bank of America, and they borrowed 500 million from Ares Management. Now, I think, if we're being totally honest, the best scenario for Chelsea, and this is years down the line, is that we can't pay off our loans and Ares Management take over the club like they did with Inter Milan. Because that is how bad this situation is getting. Like, it's becoming untenable, and you know, it's only going to get worse, I'm afraid.
Alex, I can hear the dejection in your voice, mate, and it's a great call. We really appreciate it, and I'm sure without any doubt you're speaking for a lot of the Chelsea fans.
Let's go on the big screen. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing very well. Welcome back to part 2 with myself and Bobby Fairview, who, if you didn't have the privilege of seeing the first stream, you have the privilege of seeing part 2 of a 3, maybe even a 4-part series. Now, I know Bobby has, I think you've done a couple of other things. I saw you did something with Johnny and Eunice and Goonie. I also saw you went on with another channel as well, and they were giving you some grief.
I see that look on your face. Look, man, CB has been kind to me over, well, we've been friends, if you like, for the last year or so. Look, the important thing is that I go wherever people are interested in getting the facts. The stream was probably not as serious as people would have expected. But I understand.
By the way, I didn't watch the stream, Bobby. I just saw a clip of some guy just, I don't know what he was talking about, and then he left. I saw a clip. That was all I saw.
Yeah. So it's part of CB's product. So, you know, I'm always up for a scrap as well. So I didn't mind it that much. But I do think that given the seriousness of what we're talking about, though, that we should avoid the banter around it, because, you know, we saw quite a few articles this week, The Athletic in particular, you know, and there's a lot of complicated information out there. And it is clear that fans have a thirst to understand it. So that's why I'm making myself available. Some of the criticisms of that guy yesterday, and he was not a serious person, was me not disclosing my identity. And that's intentional, not only for professional reasons, but this is not about me or my credentials, right? The role that I'm trying to play in the Chelsea fan community is to use my experience to help them go to the source documents and understand it for themselves. You're not taking my word for it. Our role is to point you in the right direction for you to read it for yourself and form your own conclusions. So I'll continue doing that. I'm sure that CB is going to have me on again. I will make myself available to whoever wants to chat.
Well, I think it's a great thing you're doing, and you know that there is so much to get into. I mean, when we had the first chat about doing a series, you said 3 or maybe even a 4-part series if we can get Ruben involved. Still, we don't know if he will. I hope he does.
He's on holiday, so that's probably why you've not heard from him yet.
Yes, he's out in Japan.
Yeah,
in Japan. So yes, enjoy your holiday, Ruben. Obviously, I hope you're watching from afar, and I hope that you can come and join us in a couple of weeks when you get back. But yeah, I mean, this stream is going to be slightly different to the first one. I mean, one of the things that I've seen you do when you've gone on certain channels is there's a lot of discussion, and I think discussion is a great thing. But actually, I really want you to try and take the lead today, Bobby, and go step by step through everything so that we can unpack it. Obviously, if anyone has any questions in the chat, feel free to put them in, and we'll try and get them answered. But we don't want to break the rhythm too much, so we'll get to questions as and when it's the right moment and when Bobby thinks it's the right time to go through it. I mean, before we go any further, let's just have a brief recap for those people who missed the last show. We spoke about private equity. What is it? It's asset management. They're managing assets. We spoke about, was it Guggenheim? Is that the one? Guggenheim?
Yep. Guggenheim, yes.
Guggenheim, which is another private equity firm with Mark Walter, who's one of the owners of Chelsea. And we basically looked at the fact that Bowley wanted to get involved in the club, didn't have enough money, so he got Vis and Walter to get involved. By that point, he was still short of 1.6 billion pounds, and that's where Clearlake came into the picture. So it's not that Bowley wanted Clearlake from the beginning. He just couldn't find, he didn't have the money, so he needed a partner, and so that's how they raised the money to buy Chelsea. But then there was a further commitment which had to be made prior to the purchase of Chelsea. So in order to buy Chelsea, you needed to prove that you could fund. Am I right in saying this? That you could
Absolutely, yeah.
You needed to prove that you could fund 1.7 billion of investment once they had the club, and so then to prove that they had that capital available, what they did was they borrowed money from JP Morgan and Bank of America, 750 million roughly, and Ares Management, which is 500 million. Now, just remind me, Bobby, which loan was taken out first? Because I know that in order to get one loan, they had to get the other one first.
Yeah, so I think, and I did some more work on that since then. It looks as though the JP Morgan Bank of America loan was borrowed on the basis of the purchase price. So in other words, it was not dependent on Ares, but I'm sure the Ares commitment was already in place. We obviously can't see these agreements, so it's hard for us to know exactly what the dependencies were. But view it as an entire package of financing. So what you've said there is largely correct. The only thing I would point out is the Athletic published, I think his name is Witherspoon, published an article this week that really went into some detail. They obviously have a lot more access than we do, and they did quite a bit of research. So the JP Morgan Bank of America facility is actually £800 million.
800. Okay, well that's good to know.
Yep, so it's gone up by 50 million, and per the June 2025 financial statements, it is now like 2 million short of that. I think it's at 798 or something like that. So you would consider it maxed out. So look, the Athletic confirmed a lot of what you and I discussed last week, with that one exception. So the Ares number is correct. We now know JP Morgan Bank of America is at 800 million. Actually, before I continue, I've been getting mixed reactions about my volume. Can the chat give me some feedback if we are having any problems with my audio? I might try to change some things on my end. So if you guys aren't hearing me clearly, please let us know. But I'll continue. And based on your clip there just now, Alex, to be clear, Ares is taking over Lyon. It was Oaktree that took over Inter.
Oaktree for Inter. Sorry, my fault. Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, it wasn't that obvious that it was an area. I think people could just see that you were making an analogy to another situation. Actually, before we dig in, what I wanted to do was I listened to you as well when you were on with Don. I'm an avid listener of Don's channel. Big up to Don. He said that I'm usually quite respectful. I actually like Don quite a lot, even some of his football takes. I tend to agree with it.
You say that as if that's surprising.
Wow, I mean, he gets so much heat around the place. I just wish he would be a little bit more interested in the numbers, because he likes to talk about transfer budgets, and that is something that we should cover, I think, in the third session when we talk about what's next. But today, guys, I mean, for those of you in the chat, today's going to be a little bit more boring. It's almost going to be like a tutorial. So we're going to actually be.
We're trying to retain the listeners, Bobby. What's going on?
Well, I've just warned them ahead of time. Now we're going to put on our turtlenecks right now and actually dig into the actual financial statements themselves.
Sure.
And it's along the theme again, guys, of you need to go and find this information for yourselves, get educated, because there's a lot of fake news out there.
I'm with you. Big up to Brian CFC as well. He says Bobby Fairview, salute General as well. Good to see Brian.
Salute, Brian. Good to see you, my friend.
I mean, just to wrap up as well on the last session. So we found out about the money that was taken out. So we're not saying that the JP Morgan and Bank of America loan was dependent on Ares, and we're not saying that Ares was dependent on JP Morgan and Bank of America. Those are just two separate transactions, but Ares would have been taken out first. Am I right in saying that?
It reflects, if you think back to the structure we had up on screen, it reflects the financing provided to Blueco 22 Limited, where Ares provided the equity and Bank of America then layered on debt. So what you're describing is accurate for Blueco 22. The sequencing at the top, we don't know enough, but it's not that important to really know.
Sure.
We just need to know that Blueco 22 the equity in Blueco 22 was actually borrowed money.
But
there's a piece more to this story, Alex.
There's more.
There is more.
What, to the last one? Oh, is this stuff that the
last one.
Athletic has uncovered?
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So before we get into our turtleneck session, let's just make folks aware. And I just actually posted about this on X, so it should be my latest tweet, where I actually described the fact that the Athletic has discovered that there is a PIK loan sitting behind Blues Investments Limited. So in other words, to make it this relatable to you, Clear Lake's investment in Chelsea is not a private equity investment, it's actually a private credit investment. And when we're talking about private credit, we're talking about Ares type financing. So
just to be clear, Bobby, this is the Chris Weatherspoon article. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Because I'm subscribed to the Athletic, so I can pull that up.
That is correct.
If that helps you.
Or you can go to X and you'll see it. I've actually screenshotted the section.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you just pull it up, pull up X and put it on screen, I've actually put a highlighted box around the section of the article for folks to go.
The green one.
Yep.
33 minutes ago.
That is correct.
Okay. Let's have a look. Let's dive into this.
So if you just go to the attachment that I put there, you can click on that. So there are two important sections here, right?
Shall I zoom in, or do you want to have the whole thing?
You can zoom in.
Zoom in. All right.
Yeah, the green box, and I have there. Yeah. Do you see that second sentence? For the curious, that's curious in a couple of ways. For one, COP3, so that's the fund that Clear Lake use, is private credit rather than an equity fund.
Yes.
Ares uses a private credit fund. So in other words, it's borrowing. Okay, it is a loan. It is not share capital. That means that there's a fixed term for repayment. The difference between debt and equity is that you get a scheduled return and a fixed maturity. Okay. If you get equity financing, your shareholder can be there and accepts the risk of not getting paid a dividend. Right? There's no scheduled return for an owner. They only get paid if the business does well. Debt is different. Debt is contractually due regardless of the performance of the business. That is why Ares has just repossessed Leon. And my post here is examining, well, did Clear Lake repossess Boley after the losses in the first year? Is that what the disagreement was? And so I'm not making a conclusion, but I'm encouraging the Athletic and others to follow up on this. There's not one PIK loan. There seems to be two of them.
And the second PIK loan, are you saying that was also from Ares, or where's that come from?
What I'm saying is that Clear Lake is not an owner. They're a lender.
Clear Lake's a lender.
That's what my post is. That's what the Athletic is saying there. It's credit. It's not equity.
What?
So credit and equity, right? Just remember.
No, I understand what you mean in terms of. I mean, please explain it anyway. But I'm just trying to understand. Why wouldn't they just? Why credit? What did Clear Lake have? I don't get this at all. I'm sorry.
So read the second part, right?
Yeah.
Where the Pennsylvania Public School Employees Retirement System, so that's an investor in COP3, the Clear Lake Fund, aims to provide returns by investing in non-controlled special investments. That's like Ares. Ares doesn't control Blueco. They just loan them money. The investors in Clear Lake are reporting to their regulators that they've invested in this Clear Lake fund, and it is not intended to be in control of the investment. COP3 only invests in one thing, okay? And that is in Blue's investment, which holds Clear Lake's investment in 22 Holdco. So what the investors disclosing here is that they gave Clear Lake money not to be in control of Chelsea, but just to be as a lender. But as it turns out, who's running Chelsea on a day-to-day basis? Clear Lake. And the only way a lender controls an investee or a business that is loaned to is if it's foreclosed on it. So is Clear Lake running Chelsea the same way that Oaktree is running Inter Milan because they're foreclosed on Bully? It's not a conclusion, it's a question. And people should pick up this Athletic article and ask these hard questions to the ownership.
Right. Okay. Let me go back to the information I already have so we can add to it.
Sure.
Because I've got my notes, my written notes. If you're going to take notes, guys, don't type on your phone. Get your pen and paper out because you're going to need it. But now that I have, I mean, this information is really, really good. So 800 million, JP Morgan, Bank of America. 500 million, Ares.
PIK.
PIK. How much is the other PIK?
So the other part of your notes should describe 1.6 billion coming from Clear. Is that what you're?
Oh, so we're not even. It's not even the investment. This is just the takeover money.
Correct.
Fuck.
Their money.
I don't even.
That we have been talking about as ownership is being described here as coming from a fund that only lends money.
Right.
A fund that has no interest in controlling its investment.
Okay. So we described the 1.6 billion provided as Clear Lake, and then we say not equity. That's basically what we're saying. Not equity.
It's another PIK. It's another PIK.
Is that legal?
Well, yeah, because I mean it was legal for Aries.
I don't understand how can you buy a club by loaning the club money yourself? That's not.
Well, no, but here's what it means, Alex, just to break it down for you. What it means is that the only owner in this is Bowley, Weiss, and Walter. Because everything else that came into the structure was borrowed money that has a fixed certain date of maturity and a contractual interest rate. So it's their compounding just like the Aries PIK. It's a higher interest rate because remember, the order in which they get repaid remains the same, right? Bully is last, Clear Lake second last, so COP3, which as we know, finding out is another PIK loan. Then the Aries PIK loan gets paid second, and the first person to get paid would be JP Morgan, Bank of America, in a liquidation situation, or even at the end when they finally sell and settle up with everybody.
I mean, sorry to interrupt, Bobby. You know, I say the last stream, it probably took me an hour before I started to get a bit confused. I'm 20 minutes in, and I'm really struggling to understand this.
Okay, take a step back. Your notes right now are pretty accurate. The only thing there are two things we've learned. Bank of America was not 750, it was 800. That's what we said last time.
So yeah, Bank of America, that's gone up by 50 mil. That's 800. Aries 500. No questions there. Bowley 900. Clear Lake 1.6 billion. I just don't understand how they can give themselves. I don't get it. How can they give themselves a PIK loan when they were buying equity in the club and they own equity? You can see that with with the graphs that we spoke about in the last episodes. Clear Lake that they own Chelsea. I don't get it.
Because there were never equity. Because as their investor is clearly disclosing, they don't control. They're not giving them money to control a business. It's a non-controlled special situation investment.
Okay, so that's because Bowley was originally the front runner of the consortium. He was in control.
He is the owner. He was the original owner. I don't know if he's still the owner, right? Right? Because we don't know what Clear Lake did to get control. They're now managing day to day since 2023. And that was widely reported after the rift between the two of them.
Is this a fair comment? Taxes? No tax on debt?
No.
That's not a fair comment.
It's not a tax play. It's not a tax play. It is that we don't have a true understanding of who actually owns this club.
Oh my
Meaning, God. Is it Clear Lake and Bowley Walter Weiss, or is it just Bowley Walter Weiss? But is it Clear Lake now because of the losses in the first year, and now Clear Lake is in a control situation? So this pension plan invested by non-control, but they're now controlling Chelsea. And how does a lender control Chelsea? The only way to do that is to foreclose. Now, as I said, I'm just putting 2 and 2 together. There's no other explanation, by the way. So this is why the Athletic is calling it curious and using these kinds of words, because clearly there's more here to be investigated.
Absolutely. So, okay.
But to answer your question specifically, can they lend? They didn't lend themselves money. Bowley borrowed money from Clear Lake. So it's just another layer of borrowing. They're not a co-owner. Clear Lake's not a co-owner. They borrowed the money. There's a credit fund that loaned the money to Bowley to buy Chelsea. So that 1.6 billion is borrowed money that needs to be repaid on a fixed schedule.
So why is Clear Lake involved? Why is Egbali involved? Like at any point, even when we saw when he first came in, it was him and Bowley. Although Bowley was the front runner, absolutely. Why do they have quote unquote equity? Like again, when we look at the document, I mean, I think it might be worth bringing up what we looked at last time. Why is it then that when you see 22 Holdco Limited, Clear Lake owned 61.85% and Bowley owned 38.15%? Why wouldn't Bowley just own 100% of the club? But then, like we owe the money to Aries, we would also owe the money to Clear Lake.
And this is where there's a detailed, technical, legal conversation that we should have. Because we get caught up in this debt to equity distinction, right? And it matters from a control perspective. It does matter. What we can see is that Bowley was clearly in control for the first year. That was obvious. Then we heard reports by the same Athletic of a rift, right? What was that rift? We never really understood what it was, but all we knew that Bowley was no longer in control, right? Why I think they wanted to present Clear Lake as an owner is that there's something called a debt equity ratio, all right? And that debt to equity ratio changes in terms of how you view Clear Lake's role in the structure. If Clear Lake is a lender, that debt equity structure is about 75-25. That is a very aggressive leverage model.
Can you please say that again?
So to the extent, if this Athletic article is correct, that means that the only equity in this structure is Bowley Walter Weiss. That is 25% of the original investment that went in, approximately, right? 900 on.
Yes. Well, so there's only 900 million of actual equity in Chelsea.
Correct. It's now grown to 1.1 because they put in some money last year, right? So right now, let's see
on Bowley's side?
Yes, that's also grown. Because remember, Bowley's always going to invest at the same percentage as Clear Lake. Otherwise, he's going to get diluted. Are you familiar with that term? What it
diluted as in they gain more shares, he has less.
More interest, right? A higher percentage interest. So he'll always match them to maintain his position as much as he can. All right. So when you think about what he's put in, and it currently stands at 1.1 billion as of June 2025. That's 1.1 billion of equity on an overall capital stack of 4.2 billion. That approximates a debt to equity ratio of 75 to 25%. That is aggressive for a business that is not cash flow positive. So they would have gotten a lot of criticism if folks didn't think of them as a co-owner. And I think that would have been the motivation. And by the way, this is me just piecing these pieces together based on what we're seeing in black and white in front of us, right? It would have been a 75 to 25 debt to equity ratio, which is aggressive, an aggressive leverage by a business that's not cash flow positive. And I think that would have been the incentive to not present what is clearly a private credit fund as what it was.
All right. I feel like you have laid this very well, but it's taken me a long time to get my head around it. Now, I understand now that,
so we can do that afterwards.
Sure. I mean, as it stands, I know that we have originally, the 900 million that Bowley's side was equity. That has rose because there's been more money that's been invested, obviously, on both sides, and Bowley has just matched what Clearlake were doing. So the total equity now is 1.1 billion. That doesn't increase how much Bowley has. It just stops him from having less. Because if Clearlake invests 100 million and he doesn't, then whatever the percentage of value the club would be for that 100 million would be diluted. Yeah. So Clearlake would get more of the club and Bowley would have less of the club. So that makes perfect sense. I'm still just trying to get my head around the PIK law. I know I keep saying it,
sure,
but I don't understand how you can own a club without owning it.
So Bowley, Walton, and White's own it. Okay, that's what we just established.
Sure.
Go back to day one, first principles. They had 300 million each. They were short by the cash required for Roman, 2.5 billion. So they needed a further 1.6 billion. They did not, based on this article in The Athletic, they did not go and raise equity financing. They borrowed the 1.6 billion from Clearlake.
Doesn't this change everything, Bobby?
Well, it does in terms of back then, but now Clearlake is clearly in control. Sure. A lender does not control, right? So truly, Clearlake is probably a co-owner today. But as we can see from this paragraph, they weren't at the start because that's not what this pension plan signed up for.
But if I'm looking at what the PIK loan is with Ares, right? Ares would just sit back, potentially, I don't know if Ares would refinance or if that's something that JP Morgan and Bank of America would do, but they know that they're in a comfortable position to be able to take over the club. Why do you think Clearlake had such a different approach and had to step in so quickly? Because I know that we burned through a lot of cash. That's obvious, but it seems a bit strange to me that Clearlake wouldn't just, if it's PIK, then what you're saying to me is that if Bowley and his consortium couldn't pay back the money that they borrowed, Clearlake could have just taken over the club anyway, and they wouldn't have to pay any more for it. Am I right in saying that?
So what you're touching on is the key point here, right? Which is that if the 1.6 was in fact a PIK loan, what that means is it has certain debt covenants. So just like how Ares had PIK loan has debt covenants as well, there will be covenants governing the amount of revenue or losses that the club can suffer. So it is possible that in that first year when Bowley lost 650 million, he could have triggered a debt covenant. And Clearlake then would have had the opportunity to say, look, this business is losing too much money. We're concerned about whether or not you can repay us. We're going to exercise our rights under this loan agreement to take control of the club. Right, which is the same thing that the likes of Oaktree did and Milan and what happened at AC Milan, etc. Similarly, Ares now comes in on top of Clearlake with their 500 million with another PIK loan, and they will have debt covenants in there, and there will be triggers, and they would also have the right, and it's been explained in an article that we'll go through in part 3, that they have the right to similarly convert their PIK loan into shares and control 22 Holdco.
Okay. Right. That's interesting. So on both PIK loans, we're saying Aries and, in this case, Clear Lake.
Mm-hmm.
If too much money is being lost, then they have the option to take control. You're also saying that there is, or there could be, an option for them to convert the debt into shares.
That is how they would exercise their right to take control.
Right.
That's how the foreclosure happens. Right? Are we going to go through a detailed article that revealed that because Aries is a public company, Aries has already disclosed how its sports management fund lends to various football clubs, and inside that their loan agreements is what is called a convertible feature to convert the PIK loan into shares with voting rights that allows them to put Leon and the other Eagle football holding clubs up for sale.
Sure. And
Clear Lake would have something similar in their PIK.
Sure. So once you convert your debt into shares, which is what I presume we're saying Clear Lake have done, that's how they took control. Can you backtrack on that?
Right. So I think what you're having a challenge picturing is the two PIK loans sitting on top. Right?
Say again, I couldn't actually hear you, Bobby.
No, I said what you're probably having a challenge with is how the two PIK loans interact with each other.
Yes.
Okay. Think of it as a stack. So this stack has 4 layers.
4 layers.
And at the top of this stack is JP Morgan, Bank of America.
Okay.
800 million. They get paid first, right, on a sale or a foreclosure. So they get their money back first. The next layer is Aries, 500 million. Forget what we call these loan equity. This is just the money required to fund the 4.2 billion on day one.
Sure.
So 4.25 now, because we added 50 million, right? So 800 million at the top, they get paid first. Second person to get paid is Aries. Now,
Sure.
Aries has a PIK loan. The two banks at the top are holding the title deeds to all of the assets in Chelsea under 22, under Blueco 22. Okay. So in order to possess these assets, the only way Aries can do that is by taking over the shares of the company.
The what? The shares?
The shares.
Sure.
The equity, right? So that's how they exercise their foreclosure. They don't go and grab the assets because the bank are holding the assets. JP Morgan and Bank of America are holding those. Aries can just simply buy out have their debt converted to shares, which dilute out Clear Lake and Bully. That's how they exercise their foreclosure.
Sure.
Right? So that's at that level, if their covenants are breached. The third layer down is Clear Lake. Initially, they put in 1.6 billion. By 2025, that has grown to 1.8 billion.
But the original investment is 1.6, yeah?
The original investment was 1.6. Similarly, they're going to have covenants in whatever agreement they have with Bully, which none of us have seen, right? Which again allows them to take control through the shares that they own. Now, it's not going to be the same thing as there's no public disclosure that confirms that this is convertible debt, but this is just the standard way of how these PIK loans work, right? So it's a good assumption, but we're asking the question. We're saying all the evidence point So the fact it was a credit fund, it's not supposed to be managing day-to-day operations. This money was a loan to the owners to buy Chelsea, 1.6 billion. So PIK structure. Yeah.
So,
and they similarly, if their covenants are breached, they can then similarly, just like Aries, take control under certain circumstances. And then the fourth layer is bully. Yeah.
Sure. So the third, so 1.6 billion. That's also a PIK loan as well, and then you've got Bowley underneath. Yeah.
And Bowley underneath, he put in 900 million. That grew to 1.1. That represents then the true equity in the structure, where somebody does not expect a fixed timeline for repayment. They're here to stay forever. They own the club. That's the Bowley layer, the fourth layer at the bottom. That also means that they only get paid if they're profits. They get paid less.
Sure. Okay. When I draw that out, it does make it a little bit easier to understand. Basically, what we're saying is that Clearlake had the same power that Aries currently have, and they just activated. They put that into action very early on, and so now it's just it's just equity that they own. It was once a PIK loan, but now it's just equity because they've already converted the shares, and now the fear, presumably on both sides, is that Aries could do the same to both of them.
Exactly. And Clearlake's covenants are going to be a lot more sensitive than Aries because they are below them in that step we just described. They're more vulnerable. So they need to have rights to act faster than Aries because they get paid after Aries. So if there's shit happening, they need to be able to take control of the situation faster to protect themselves. And that's why it is possible, based on what we're reading here, that dispute that happened in September 2023 is in fact Clearlake acting on Bowley to take control from him so that this pension plan now needs to understand that they did not originally plan to give money to run Chelsea, but now they're running it because something happened.
And now that they've taken control of over 60% of the shares, obviously the majority shareholder, if the thing is they still don't have the power to sell 100% of the club. It's not like Aries in that sense. They would only sell their portion of the club, and that's with Bowley's permission as well.
Correct. So the articles of association are clear on who has what rights under a sale scenario. Okay, so Clearlake, although they provided a PIK loan, it was a PIK loan to subscribe to the Class A shares of 22 Holdco. Those shares had certain rights. Now the question is, was there some other side agreement? There clearly is some other side agreement that has to map to the loans that are sitting in COP3. Because remember, COP3 is credit. They're a lending fund, right? So there has to be some sort of loan agreement between COP3 and Blues Investments, which is the Clearlake vehicle. And the rights under that loan agreement have to be pushed through to the control situation at a 22 Holdco level. And we have seen that change in control happen before our eyes. We saw the rift between the ownership, we saw the reporting, and we saw that Igbali now runs the show.
Sure. Yeah. No, I don't think there's any questions from that side. That took a little bit longer than I expected, but that's good. I have a feeling.
It's important information. It's important information.
Definitely. I mean, I have a feeling. I have a feeling a number of people probably agreed with me in terms of not understanding, and hopefully this gives you a bit more context. So again, break it down into layers. Who's going to get paid first? JP Morgan. Aries is the second one. Clearlake's third. Bowley's fourth in terms of priority. So if we were to sell the club tomorrow, who gets that money first? Then you look at the two PIK loans. Aries takes priority. So whatever happens, it doesn't actually matter what Clearlake would have done. If Aries weren't happy, they could have activated that PIK loan. Well, not right now, obviously, when payments due. Even if Bowley was still running the show, and they could have converted that loan into shares, which would have been 1.5. Actually, no, it would have just been 100% of the club. Am I right in saying that?
Well, it's about control, right? Because
Sure.
remember, the protection here is that if the person you loan the money to is not running the business prudently, you as a lender need to protect yourself by going in and managing the situation for yourself and to make sure you can get paid. Right. So that's clearly what we saw happen there. But look, my post actually, if you just come back out of the attachment itself, and go to the actual post behind it, I do quite a bit of a detailed write-up there that folks can go back and actually understand what that paragraph is saying. And feel free to leave comments, ask me questions, etc. I try to use as much plain language as possible to describe what's happening there and why this is a new discovery coming out of the Athletic article.
Yes. You also mentioned that COP3 raised 2.2 billion, and there's only 400 million left to cover future losses. What would you project our revenues? So if we have 400 million less, I mean, are we making enough to be profitable, or are we losing an awful lot of money?
So this is not revenue. So we need to keep that in mind. This is investments still available, right?
Yes, that's what I mean, though, Bobby, because they would only use that if they were losing money or if they had to invest, right?
So collectively, they put in 450 million last year, proportionally between Bowley and Clearlake. And what I'm saying is that if you've only got 400 million left, and let's assume that Bowley is going to match that, he's also got committed funds. That's about 650 million between them. That's left. If they need to do something like they did last year, which is to pump in 450 million, there's only 650 million left to take that kind of action going forward, because COP3 is closed. There's no more money going into COP3. COP3 only has 400 million of room. All of the loans are currently maxed out. So Ares is maxed out. JP Morgan, Bank of America is not. It's I think it's only got 2 million of room left. And what we're saying is, as you go down further down into Clearlake, COP3 raised 2.2 billion pounds. It has used 1.8, which means 400 million is left. And then we have to assume that Bowley, Walter, and Weiss are going to match that their proportionate interest. So that will get you to like 650 million pounds that are left to cover future losses. The problem is, and we're going to pivot to the financial statements now and see that it lost 522 million of cash from operating last year. That's just from operations. So 650 in the till in reserve, and we're burning 522 in a year. Doesn't give us a lot of time, does it?
No, it does not. We're looking at, is it 22 Holdco Limited, right?
Yeah, so let's dive into what we were supposed to talk about. I mean, the Athletic really derailed a bit of my thinking when I saw that. I was like, wow, I did not know that Clearlake was a creditor and not an owner. But let us go to what we wanted to talk about today, which is to show folks, firstly, where they can find the financial statements, which financial statements they should be looking for. And then let's just do a quick tour of those financial statements to just pick out the kind of things that I look at so that folks can see the kind of conclusions that I'm posting about on X. So let us pull up a browser there and pull up Companies House.
I mean, I'm already on Companies House. I've got 22 Holdco Limited ready. If this is the one we're looking for. Correct.
No, but let's show people how to get here, just so that they can replicate the process.
Sure. Okay.
So if they just pull up a Google page, put in Companies House,
and then you just go to the main part of the website, and then you can search for a company, presumably.
Yeah, it's not showing. I'm just seeing your Google page. Is the internet slow? Because it's not showing on our side.
It's not showing.
No.
Oh, sorry. I need to switch sorry, my fault. Here we go.
So companies, so if you just go to the homepage so that folks can see what they'll be. All right. So let's start from the scratch. So guys, you know, we were looking at the chart last week. We already agreed that 22 Holdco is the top holding company in the structure. So if you want the complete view of everything that's going on underneath Clearlake in the Bowley Group, we want to find 22 Holdco on Companies House. So here's how you do it. So let's just put it in the search there.
Is it Holdco?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, enter. All right, and we should see it come up. We don't see 22 Holdco. That's a bit crazy. Are you on Companies House or just gov.uk?
I thought, let's try this. Let's try limited, see if it comes out. Right, let's go.
It was not supposed to work that way. Let's put Companies House back into the browser again and start over because
Companies House. This is the one, right?
There we go. Companies House, yeah. And you should see a thing for search for a company. So go in there. It's not popping up. Is there something that you need to do to switch it?
Oh, sorry, my fault. It keeps switching the tabs. Okay, here we are. Find company information, file your company.
Firstly, accept additional cookies. Let's get that out of the way.
Sure.
Just so we can see what's going on. Find company information. There we go. Find company information. You see that? Okay, good. So start now. Okay, and now put 22 Holdco. There we go. 22 Holdco Limited. Perfect. Now, what we will see is filing history. Okay. Now, before we go any further, if we go to the bottom of the page, actually, Alex, you'll see that there's some page numbers at the bottom. If you go to page 2, what you'll find in here are the articles of association. You see memorandum and articles of association, 7th of June, 2022. That entry, 7th. Okay, that is another important document that Ruben has been doing a lot of research on. And that explains how the two owners of the Class A and Class B shares vote, how they are able to make a decision to sell the club. So this describes the fact that they have to provide consent to each other for a sale and discusses all the terms around that. So you'll have a detail, it talks about the board, it gives you all the information about 22 Holdco.
That's what we're looking for, general authority, page 5?
Yeah, well, we're not going to do that now. That's for the session with Ruben, right? So I want folks to understand when they're seeing Eunice and Johnny and those guys talking about the articles of association, this is the document, that's how you find it. So let's go back out and let's go back to page 1 of the.
Back to page 1. Okay. Yep. Sorry.
No.
Well, page 1 on Companies House.
Exactly. No.
Okay.
Okay. And the top entry there of all the filings, you see a group of companies accounts up to June 30th, 2025. That's the document that we're looking for. Okay. So let's click on the PDF. Great. So just scroll down a bit and let's go to what's called the strategic report. But it gives, well, there's tons of company information there, the directors, etc., which could be interesting reading.
JP?
I think that's if you look at the composition of that board there, you'll see that you'll have the 3 Bowley Group representatives, and I believe the other 3 paid is going to be a Clearlake representative. So when people talk about the board, let's be clear about this. And we talk about Wayne Stanley and all these clowns, okay? These aren't real directors. Okay, those are just management titles. This is the real board that makes all the decisions and is split 50-50 to represent the Clearlake Group and the Bowler Group.
Yep, makes sense.
All right, so let's keep going. We want to go down to what's called a strategic report.
Strategic report. Here we go.
There we go. All right, so let's go to the. Let's keep going to when we get to the text. That's just a table of contents. So the strategic report. This is where you can actually read this document. It gives you a narrative description of what happened during the year. It tells you about the sales, about the revenue numbers. You can just scroll channel. You're not going to spend time, really reading it. But this is just for folks to understand.
I mean, it talks about the net loss. That's quite important.
It talks about the numbers. If you go down to the group reports a loss before tax of 700 million.
473 million.
Last year. All right. So it's gone up to 708 million. And I think we had a comment from one of the viewers last week about the revenue being 700 million. Maybe he was mixing it up with the pre-tax loss, because Chelsea does not make more revenue than Liverpool and Arsenal. And they will not make more revenue than Liverpool and Arsenal next year. Okay.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Okay. So we need to stop talking about that pipe dream of 700 million of revenue next year. But again, this is at the top of the house level, right? And it gives you commentary, broadcasting, commercial. It gives you all the commentary that you need. If you come down to the Chelsea Football Club section, which is just below it, right? It gives you all of there's a 262.4 million loss that everybody was reporting a few weeks ago, right? It tells you about the average attendance, approximately 40,000. So it gives you that kind of information about the performance of the business coming straight from the directors. So I would encourage everybody to read the strategic report. So you don't have to rely on Greg Cordell or Bobby Fairview or anybody to tell you what these numbers here are. It's right here in the report, and it's attributed to the various activities in the business.
Yeah, so you've got to go to it's always about the group of companies' accounts. That's what you always want to try and find then, yeah?
Always 22 Holdco. That's the that's what you call top co. So the top company in the group.
Sure. And this comes out how often? Every year?
Well, whenever they publish the financial statements. So this is their financials. All this is part of the financial statements, right? So once they publish those group accounts, it must have the strategic report in it. So I'd encourage everybody to read it.
What's fascinating as well is the commercial revenue went down by 25 million. If we would have accepted a sponsor of 35 million, which is totally realistic, maybe 40, we would have made more commercial revenue. Like, I don't understand, even on a commercial level, how these guys work, because they're not sucking every pound in, they're not getting every penny that they should out of this club. That's sorry, this is going a little bit off topic, Bobby, but I don't understand.
As a business is boggling. The incompetence is just beyond belief. You just don't get it. But if you scroll down a little bit, they'll talk about the women's team as the next one, as the next section. So let's keep scrolling. I saw it was page 1 of the
sales that we made as well.
Yep, it describes all of that. Talks about the women's team. Okay, and it gives a little brief on Strasbourg. So as you can see here, Strasbourg had losses of 65.8 million before taxation, right? Pre-tax loss 65.8 gives you all that information there. Okay, and then it actually talks about what happened during the year in terms of on the pitch. And then it gives, if you keep scrolling, you'll see some key performance indicators from a financial perspective, right? So it's actually an interesting read, just a couple pages for you to get yourself oriented about the story of the financial story of the year. So you do not have to rely on anybody else to tell you that story. It's right here. It's been reviewed by KPMG. You can have confidence in these numbers. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I'm actually surprised how much sense it makes. Usually, you'd think these documents would be quite complicated. It's quite simple.
It's for average people to read, right? It's in English, plain English, and it just tells you the numbers, right? And it gives you the commentary around it, right? So this is what you call the strategic report. As I said, if you keep going, then you should get into. So it tells you about all the operating expenditures from a group perspective. So that's all 22 Holdco. Talks about the regulatory environment.
Interest rates, is that relevant for this, or
this is more of a canned comment? So we will find out the true interest rates later on. But then there's a bunch of climate related stuff that all this is just canned information. The more important stuff we've just scrolled through already, so we can keep going. There's a lot of climate related stuff, risk management. These are, nothing interested in these pages. So I want to say probably the first 3 pages of the strategic report are probably the most useful. So we can keep going. They talk about the risk strategy, this kind of thing. So if we keep going to the next report is going to be the director's report. This is going to be less informative.
No. Oh, it says metrics and targets. Is that? No. Oh, it's fucking emissions. Okay, no. That's not.
No. This is all green stuff. Now, this is weird. Here's an upside down page. So it seems a bit sloppy, doesn't it?
Does it allow me to turn it upside down? Oh, look, there you go.
But you would have to you've just turned the rest of the document upside down. But somebody, carelessly scanned this. So by the time you get to the next page, you don't need to flip it again.
Oh, sorry.
Let's go. Yeah, but let's there's no more useful information in this strategic reports. So let's make our way to the director's report just to show you. Look, all this is stuff that'll be interesting reading, by the way. Fans, you see they talk about fans there?
Oh, now it's upside down again.
Yeah, because there was only one page that is scanned poorly. So you need to just change the entire document again. Okay, yeah. You did it too much. All right. There we go. All right, so keep scrolling. Then just to orient folks again. So you see who's been signed by. There's the director's report. This is more of a canned report. So it reads the same way every year. Results and dividends. Let's just have a quick look at what's under results and dividends. Okay, so again, this is them repeating the same thing. Now, the directors do not recommend payment of a dividend, so they're not taking any money out of the business.
Apart from Bowley, as a chairman.
That is a rumor, because we're not going to find that had to been disclosed, and we're going to find that 20 million thing is a myth. It is actually a myth. Yeah,
that's not true.
It's not true. No, at least I don't. Well, I mean, it should have been disclosed unless KPMG made a mistake, which I don't think they did.
Right.
But keep scrolling. Yeah, we'll look at the director's compensation later on.
KPMG, they're the auditor. Yeah.
A lot of this is standard stuff that the UK companies law requires them to just talk about in these reports. But you will find some tidbits in there. All right. Okay. So then the first thing we should always do, director's responsibility. This is more canned information. Let's keep going. So here's let's pause here. This is KPMG, right? So for those who don't know, there are 4 large accounting firms in the world. I worked for one of them called PricewaterhouseCoopers. I spent 12 years there. KPMG is another big global firm. So they are required to come in and audit this report, audit the financial statements and the footnotes, which we are about to get to. And you'll see they'll describe the work that they've done. Going concern, which is a section in here, is something important that we should always focus on. So going concern, if you scroll down a little bit, are you familiar with what going concern means? What a going concern is? Okay, so whenever you say a business is a going concern, it means that it is a business that's operating and is not at risk of becoming insolvent.
Sure.
right? So Chelsea Fan TV is a going concern. Whether or not the 22 Holdco is a going concern is something that we should pay attention to. And there's going to be an important footnote that we'll get to later on. But what all KPMG saying is saying that the accounts are presented on the basis that this business can continue to operate. It is solvent. Okay?
Sure.
And if it isn't, they need to report that here. So right now it's solvent, right? So let's keep going. This is a pretty standard report. It's going to read the same way every year unless the company is going bankrupt. Then it will say, or unless there's a major error in the accounts. Okay, this report will tell you that. And you'll see they've read, see that statement about the strategic report and director's report? The directors are responsible, but they've read it to me, and so they don't the audit opinion doesn't cover those reports, but they would have read them to make sure they're consistent with the financial statements. Oh, that's all I'm saying. So let's keep going until we get then to the first set of financial statements, which should be the income statement, I believe. There we go. Group profit and loss. So now remember, this is the total company view, right? So this will have Strasbourg women's team and Chelsea in it. So Chelsea by itself generated, as we saw, 490 million pounds for the year in turnover. Okay, and you'll see, but this is all three of them together, and there you see the loss before taxation going from 473 million to 700 million in 2025. Are you seeing that in the middle of the page? Loss before taxation.
Loss before taxation. I'm seeing the 700.
Right, and you see loss before taxation on the left as a description.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Good. So this is where, guys, you make sure that when you see reporting coming out from Blueco, hey, we made a loss of 282 million. Well, did you really? That's Chelsea only. We want to have a view of what all the clubs in the multi-club have lost together. And that's the number there. 701 million. All right. So let's, yes.
Oh my God.
So and you'll see and that has the interest. The other thing that would have been missing from the Chelsea accounts on a standalone basis was the interest on the debt. So you see this includes all the interest on the PIKs and everything in here. It doesn't have the Clear Lake PIK. And this is where we have to be careful how we talk about that, because it's complicated and why that should not be reflected here and why that would not have been presented as a PIK. But that's a very
can you just reiterate for some people who might, again, obviously I know what PIK, but just for people who might not know what PIK means.
So PIK means paid in kind. Let's park it on until we get to the debt section, and then we will explain it when we look at the Aries, the disclosures about Aries later on.
Sure.
Okay.
But
this is just a basic income statement, and that would have all the items on it.
The loss for year ending for 2024, and then you've got the 473 million, and then the 700 million. Is that 700 on top, or is that 400? Plus another couple hundred million on top to make 700. It just gradually got worse. It's not that they lost another 700 in total.
Yeah, they lost 700, another 700 in total.
Another 700. So, okay.
Yes.
Oh, God.
This is for the year, 12 months only.
Wow.
So year ended 30th of June, 2024. That's the profit and loss for that year only. 2025, 700 is for that year only. So what you're looking for is the cumulative. Let's go to the balance sheet. It's there.
Oh, it's brutal.
So the next page should be your group balance sheet. Okay.
Yeah, this is it.
You probably want to zoom out a little bit to see if we can get the entire thing in. Oh no, that's too small. Okay, we'll scroll up and down. That's fine.
Where do you want me, at the top or in the middle or bottom?
Yeah, let's go from the top and just run down it so that folks can see what's actually in here. Just come out a little bit so we can see the description. Okay, there we go. So the investment properties are all obviously the hotels, etc. Okay, the tangible assets, I assume that's the stadium, but they'll put note 13. So you see that column there, notes? Yes. That means that there's a footnote to come that will describe what's in that line item. That's how you read it.
Right.
So that'll tell us what's in those tangible assets. The intangible assets are the players. So the book value, the amortized value of the players currently sits at 1,369,804. So
meaning they have to pay that money off, or that's already been spent?
That is the amortized cost of the players. So remember, we walked through an example last week of you buying a car, and at the end of year 3, the car had a book value of £20,000, and you sold it for 25,000.
Sure.
The equivalent of that £20,000 is that 1,369. That's the amortized value. So in other words, the original cost of the contract less the amount of amortization accumulated since the player has been at the club.
I'm with you. Yeah. So
that's
just the flat value of what we paid.
Less amortization, right? So remember, you had bought the car for 50. At the end of year 3, the amortized value was 20. This is the equivalent of the 20.
Right. I see. Okay. So I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, and you've got goodwill and negative goodwill as well.
Yeah, this is just the premium that they paid on the club. This is not an important number because it's not a cash number. There's methods in accounting for valuing goodwill when you acquire a business. There are rules around that, but it is not really relevant to the final valuation of the company, and it's not a cash item. Right. So when we are trying to get from net income to operating income, you strip out things like goodwill, because goodwill is not important for how to understand how they run the club as a business.
Sure.
Right. So, and those stocks, that just represents the value of the goods in the gift shop. The debtors, we'll see what's in there in a minute. And when I was talking about 129 million of cash being on hand, there is your cash number, 128781. That's how much cash they had at June 30th, 2025.
It's not a lot. That's why they had to pump in more.
That's why they had to pump in more. And we'll see shortly when we get to the cash flow statement why that was. Let's just keep scrolling down a little. Okay, so let's get into the creditors, right? So that line item, that 1.6 billion, we're going to see when we get to note 20 what is in there. What we expect is to find the Aries and the JP Morgans and the unpaid transfer fees, etc. should be sitting in that line item.
Oh my God! So that's the money that Clearlake. Am I right? The 1.6.
No. That's Aries and all those guys. Remember,
that's Aries and JP Morgan, right?
Exactly. Now, the interesting number for you, which you were trying to ask me just now about, is that a cumulative or is that for the year? The cumulative number of all the losses since they've been here, it sits on that profit and loss reserve line. 1.788 billion is what they've lost since they've been here. That's your number.
Where can you see that it's a loss? Just out of curiosity, because it doesn't specify if it's brackets, it's a loss.
It's negative if it's brackets. That number should be positive like the other numbers.
I'm with you.
Okay. So which means that they have total equity left of 1.125730. You see that number?
Yes.
If we scroll back up to the P&L, how much did we lose this year? So
we lost over 700 million.
Well, good. So how much we got left? So we only have a billion of equity left, right? Which means that if they continue incurring those losses, that negative profit and loss reserve is going to grow and grow and erode that number until the total equity becomes zero or less. Right? So in other words, when that hits zero, that means his balance sheet is what's called technically bankrupt. So it doesn't, bankruptcy in the sense that we know it is when a company runs out of cash. They might not run out of cash, but what we're saying is that the owner's equity is eroding very quickly because that profit and loss reserve has grown by about 700 million last year.
Oh man.
I don't make this stuff up, but I just wanted folks to know where to find it. It is right here in black and white for you to validate for yourselves, right? And it's not a pretty picture.
No, it's not a sell Chelsea Fan TV to balance the books. I'm not sure I can make much of a dent, but yeah. I mean, Bobby, it's a damning sight. And when you look at the money, you know, what's your prediction for the next statement?
In terms of what it might look like?
Yes, because you saw a loss of 400 million and then a loss of 700 million. I mean, do you predict that number will be similar?
No, I think it's going to drop because we had Champions League in 25-26.
Sure. Oh, obviously the ones that were going to come out from this current season, aren't they? Not next season. That's the one that I'm really worried about.
Correct. The following season is going to be problematic. The net set of accounts should not be this bad because we should expect Champions League. As it turns out, though, they only booked apparently 18 million pounds of the Club World Cup income. So you should see that somewhere in here as well.
Okay.
Once you read through it, but yeah. So it should be a better picture next year than what it was this year. But to your point, when you get to 26, 27, that could get ugly. And we also need to remember, though, that because of the way the PIK loan is compounding and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, interest gets charged on a bigger and bigger balance every year. Right. Yeah. So the interest expense is going to continue to grow. Right. So, I mean, it might be flat, might be slightly less. They're trying to be optimistic. Now it's going to be better. That's going to improve. The only way to improve that, though, is with some player sales. That's the
yeah, I mean, I was having this conversation with Nina and Charlie earlier. I was explaining that what you were talking about amortization and how PSR is not relevant when we talk about raising money for the company. It's not about PSR and complying. It's about being profitable. And even if you're selling Enzo for 77 million, you've still lost 30 million on the books. And even if that's his current book value, that is a net loss. And so that's why it's unlikely, unless Fernandez forces his way out, I think it's unlikely that you see the sale of Fernandez. I think that's why they've been so keen to extend Caicedo's contract. I mean, we haven't spoken about the Diarra clause as well, which I think is incredible. I think that's going to be the catalyst.
Have you researched it?
I haven't researched it, but I mean, I've spoken about it loads.
You have, based on what I told you. So I said, I was like, this guy really trusts me.
I'm like, Article 17, guys. Article 17. That's what you need to look at. But it makes perfect sense why we've got a contract extension for Caicedo. It would make perfect sense if Gusto got a new contract. It's understandable if Enzo gets a new deal. And it's understandable for a lot of players that are going to be at this club or have been at this club for 3 years or almost a little bit longer. That Diarra clause takes all control away from Chelsea in terms of being able to lock these players into long contracts. What we have done is essentially, you know, just kick ourselves in the teeth because the players haven't got new contracts to play for because they're already on a long deal, but they can still have that power. And I mean, to be honest with you, I don't like the Diarra clause at all. I think it's I don't think it's right. I think the club should have the option to lock a player in for as long as they want. It's the player's decision. Nobody's forced into a transfer like that. It's very unusual, at least. And so I think that the club should have more power in that instance. But unfortunately, even the one loophole that we thought at one point would benefit us to a degree, i.e. getting Palmer and all these players on long deals, doesn't seem to have any effect after 3 years.
Well, I am less. I guess I was pro club before. I am now more pro player power, because these, and I'll tell you why. Whose benefit is it for, right? Why should people be making money off of them? That's where the expense is actually at these greedy owners who are trying to make a return off of these players. And I think the Diarra ruling balances it out a little bit, but that's a more general conversation that we can have, because we got a lot to cover, and I noticed that we're already at an hour and 20 minutes. Sure. These guys don't look too bored yet. They're still asking questions, but let's just see if we can keep going. The next statement, and this is going to be important as we read this. So if you go to the next page, it's important to pay attention to which page you're looking at, right? So you see at the top there, company balance sheet.
Sure. Yeah.
Go up to the prior page and you'll see group balance sheet.
The para page. What does that mean? The para page.
Prior page.
Oh, the prior. Sorry, that was the accent.
Prior page. Yeah, prior page.
There we go. Yeah.
So let's go to the top. See group balance sheet versus company balance sheet.
Sure.
That's an important distinction to make sure you know what you're looking at, because it says balance sheet just doesn't mean you should read it, right?
Yes.
Group means consolidated. Remember that big chart that we saw from Greg Cotell? That has everything underneath 22 Holdco in the group balance sheet.
Yes.
The next page is the company balance sheet, meaning this is the balance sheet for 22 Holdco only. And therefore, go on. The only thing you should see in the liabilities here is the PIK loan.
But everything goes under 22 Holdco anyway, no? Or are we saying it's all separate entities?
So what we're talking about is consolidated versus unconsolidated. So the company balance sheet is just 22 Holdco alone, without consolidating all of its subsidiaries.
Oh, without
Strasbourg and everybody.
Yes, Strasbourg, under the bridge, the hotels. Okay, I'm with you.
So this page is generally useless. So you don't need to read this page. You want to read pages with group at the top of it. So if you go to the next page.
Oh, go down again.
Yeah, if you go down again. So that was the
company balance sheet. And then we're going to go back to group.
So there we go. We have something called a group statement of changes in equity. So this is again at group level. You only want to look at group. What this is showing is a reconciliation of all the capital contributions of the owners. All right. So if you see issue of share capital, just at the bottom, come down.
Yes.
Issue of share capital, that 449995.
Is fit, yeah.
That is the amount of capital that they put in this year. So in other words, they contributed 450 million of cash to support these operations this year.
Sure.
All right. So that came from the owners. As I explained earlier, there's about 650 million left. Will appear on that line in future years. Okay.
Yep.
Let's keep going. This should be a company. You see, ignore company. This is just company. This is just for 22 Holdco alone. These numbers are irrelevant. All right, so here we go. Group statement of cash flows. This is probably one of the most important statements to look at. Because what this does is to strip out things like goodwill and all these non-cash items. Because the lifeblood of a business is cash. So how much cash is this business actually consuming in its operations? And you would see that when Greg Cordell, posts things, he's talking about the net cash from operations. So that 522 million, that 521,899.
Yeah.
That is the cash consumed in running this group of clubs, this multi-club structure as a business. That's how much cash was lost in operations this year. Right.
And I think, was it 60 million of that was Strasbourg and the rest was Chelsea, right?
We
saw the statement earlier, right?
Yeah, but that was the loss, the accounting loss for Strasbourg.
Oh, I see.
What we're trying to isolate here is the cash.
So it's got nothing to do with loss. It's just how much cash it's consuming.
Exactly right. And that's a key number for us at all times, right? Because what we're going to try to prove later on, that look, if they continue to lose this much cash every year, they're going to exhaust that 650 million pretty shortly that they have left, right? So here are the investing activities, purchases of intangible assets. So that's the cash used to buy players. Intangible assets are player contracts. Proceeds on disposal of intangible assets. Again, that's player sales, cash received from player sales. So that's the cash, the installments that the players are not paid for all cash up front. They're usually staggered. Like Isak was sold in three installments. So his 125 million that Liverpool is playing to Newcastle will be paid in 3 installments. So the installment made in the current year appears on that line, purchase of intangibles. Or for Newcastle, disposal of intangible. That's where it would go for Newcastle.
Sure.
Okay. Proceeds from borrowings. Really interesting. Okay. If you go under financing activities, proceeds from borrowings. So this is how much more money they drew from the Ares facility and the JP Morgan Bank of America. So you can see in 2024.
What are you looking at now? You're looking at
proceeds from borrowings under financing activities.
Yes, I'm with you.
That's the amount of money they pulled out of the loans.
967 million and then 151 million.
Yeah.
And they've repaid 317 million and 276 million. Is that right?
Yes. No, that's important, actually. When they say they repaid that, we need to be really careful, right? Because 300 million of the 800 million facility with JP Morgan and Bank of America, that's what you call a revolving credit facility. It's like your an overdraft account. And you have to bring your overdraft to zero every month. For a revolving credit facility, they have to pay it off every year. They spend it back out, but they pay it off every year. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I just have a question. I know the answer, but just address. JC says, did you look at Chelsea Football Club's financial statement? This is the financial statements. It's the 22 holdco, which is basically Chelsea, as well as the other assets that they own.
Yeah, JC, I'm not sure what you're asking that question, but this includes Chelsea Football Club. All right, so let's keep running because we got a lot. I'm sure people must be tapping out by now.
Bobby, we've got all day. We've got all day. Don't worry.
As long as you aren't tapping out, you've had a long day.
I'm
right.
I'm a big boy, Bobby. I can handle it.
But you see, these things are readable. Are you a lot more comfortable now that you're actually seeing this? That you're comfortable picking this up yourself and actually understanding what's going on? Are you getting that feeling that you're looking at it?
I mean, if I'm being totally honest with you, I would still be leaning on the likes of yourself and Greg Cordell. But what you're doing is you're giving us an understanding. Like even if we knew what to read, it's where do you read? How would I know that page 25 of this 52-page document is relevant? And I think that's important as well. And also understanding, it's not just about what's happening With Chelsea, it's about what's happening with Blueco, because if Blueco is losing money as a whole, it's obviously going to have a direct impact on us as a club.
Yes. So, I mean, even if you scroll back up to the profit and loss, which is about 4 pages above it.
4 pages above it. Which one?
Yeah.
So you want me to go to
profit and loss? Just go up, just to give people a sense as to what's going on. So keep going up to the first statement. No, keep going. So about three more pages up. Keep going. Keep going. 1 page up. Okay. So you see that turnover number there, 535, 536, 535. Chelsea is 490 million of that. So the vast bulk of these statements are Chelsea. Chelsea was leveraged to buy Strasbourg, right? They used Chelsea as an asset and the borrowing ability of Chelsea to acquire Strasbourg.
Sure.
So that's why it's so important. It's all connected. Strasbourg doesn't exist as an entity now unless Chelsea's assets weren't used to buy it. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
All right. So we've covered that's what you call the primary statements. We've gone through the profit and loss. And remember, make sure you're looking at the group statements only, right? Because there are company statements in here as well. So we've looked at the profit and loss. We've looked at the balance sheet. We've looked at the changes in equity and saw them putting money in. And then the important statement for us is, what's the cash burn? And we saw that the operations consumed 522 million of cash last year. We saw that on the balance sheet, we saw accumulated losses of 1.8 billion, right? So those are all key metrics that when I first got these, I started looking for these things. What was the pre-tax loss? 700 million. What was the accumulated P&L reserve? 1.8 billion. What's the cash consumed in operations? 522 million. These are the numbers that you want to have at your fingertips when you're having these conversations.
Yep.
Right? Okay. Let's go down to the footnotes. So let's just scroll down. We had got into the group cash flow.
How far am I going down, Bobby? The whole way?
Yeah. No. Just scroll. I'll tell you when to stop. So we looked at all of these. Right.
Company statement for change in equity.
We ignore those.
Group statement of cash flows.
Very important statement. Yeah. You see all the borrowings, etc. And then we get into the footnotes, right? Notes to the financial statement. So this is a lot of standard information here that is generally the same every year. Technical accounting stuff that would probably put you to sleep. But if you keep scrolling,
sure.
I used to write this stuff for a living. Jesus Christ, it was terrible. So keep going. Keep going. Stop at 1.4, and I would like you to read 1.4 to the audience.
Sure, let's do it.
In its entirety.
The financial statements have been prepared on a going concern basis, which the directors consider to be appropriate for the following reasons. The group and company meet their day-to-day working capital requirements from operational cash flows, external loan funding, and owner funding. The directors have prepared cash flow forecasts and performed a going concern assessment, which indicate that in both the base case and the reasonably possible downsides, the group and company will require additional funds from the consortium led by Todd Bowley and Clearlake to meet their liabilities as they fall due during the 12-month period from the date of approval of the financial statements, the going concern assessment period. The group prepares and reviews its cash flow forecasts on a regular basis and keeps its parent aware of the various potential funding scenarios. The group has considered various base case and severe but plausible downside cases, with on-pitch performance of the men's football team being a key driver. The ownership group has indicated its intention to continue to make such funds available as are needed by the company during the going concern assessment period. The most significant factor that determines the extent of the financial support requirement is the net impact of future player transfer activity. As with any company,
pause right there.
Sure.
Read that sentence again.
The most significant factor that determines the extent of the financial support requirement is the net impact of future player transfer activity.
What does that mean to you?
It means if they sell players, we'll be all right. And if they don't, we're fucked.
There we go. In black and white, in the financial statements. So when people accuse me of being, causing people to panic and overstating the situation, it is right there in black and white that we are a sell to buy club. Frankly, I think we're a sell to survive club, which is what that is saying. That they need to sell players. The proceeds of the net player sales activity is required to meet working capital requirements for operations.
Oh, God. That's a damning statement as well, Bobby. I mean, fair play for remembering exactly where everything is. I know it's probably chalk and cheese for you, but I mean, going through that, reading everything as well. I mean, it talks about, that they are. It almost says that they are aware of the risks, and they are aware of the various potential funding scenarios. So I guess that goes back to what we're talking about.
Keep reading. There's more. So keep reading after that statement that I asked you to pause at.
As with any company placing reliance on its ownership for financial support, the directors acknowledge that there can be no certainty that this support will continue, although at the date of approval of these financial statements, they have no reason to believe that it will not do so.
Let's pause there. The last statement is not that important. Let's pause there.
Sure.
These guys are saying they don't know if they have the money. Right? Now that also worries me. So not only do we have to sell players to meet working capital requirements, but we can't guarantee, we don't have committed funds. That's mad. And I challenge anybody to go find the Newcastle financial statements and tell me if they're making a similar disclosure. And I can guarantee you they are not.
Yeah.
No other club is saying this in their accounts in the EPL, as far as I'm aware. I haven't checked all of them. And I challenge anybody who's a doubter or skeptic, get your favorite AI app, load the financial statements of all these clubs and say, well, is anybody else saying this in their footnotes?
Yeah, this is... You know what this feels like, Bobby? It's like when you know you're going to lose a game, you go to the game, you're still looking forward to it in a way, and then that first goal goes in that you concede. That's what this feels like.
This pretty late in the game, I don't know, but let me be fair. This statement was in the prior year accounts. Okay, you only make this kind of disclosure when you're concerned, when you know that this balance sheet and this.
Why are they making this? Why do they have to make that disclosure? Why can't they just, for lack of a better word, just make it seem like everything's okay? Why do they have to? What's the rules behind that?
If there is a concern about going concern. And by the way, this disclosure is short of what is required by IFRS. IFRS requires them to explain the key assumptions that they are relying on, because they have admitted they're doing this assessment. They have to be doing this assessment. And therefore, we can see that they're making huge losses. We see that if the losses continue within a year or two, they'll be technically bankrupt. All of this is why they have to speak to it. But what they should be speaking to, and if KPMG is listening to us, what we expect next year, Mr. KPMG, is that you explain to us the key assumptions used. Because how sensitive is this going concern to the working capital needs on player sales? They've not described what they're relying on to make this judgment.
And that's obviously on purpose because they don't want, presumably, people to know the extent of exactly how bad this is.
That is the debate that always happens between management and auditors. KPMG is going to want to disclose more. Management is going to say, can you live with this? Can you live with this? We don't want to scare investors. Can we not say this much? That's the natural tension between the directors and an auditor. Sure. So this is a compromise position that they've reached, but it tells us a lot. There are two key things here. We need to sell players to meet working capital requirements. So this idea that we're selling players to fund transfer activity, this is not what this statement is saying. This statement is saying we need to sell players to fund operations. And then, although Clear Lake is a $95 billion operation, what it is saying is that Clear Lake cannot guarantee that it can meet these funding requirements in the future. So this idea that Clear Lake has unlimited money to spend on this venture, that's a dream.
Well, let's finish this statement at least.
Sure.
Consequently, the directors are confident that the company and the group will have sufficient funds to continue to meet their liabilities as they fall due for at least 12 months from the date of approval of the financial statements, and therefore they have prepared the financial statements on an going concern basis. And that's 1.4 there. That's probably the most important thing that we've read all day. I mean, obviously the numbers are important. It gives you context as to why this is massive. But now, when people say, Alex, which player do you want to bring in? I'm like, there was a part of me that would, I would happily entertain the conversation because obviously you like talking about transfers, but it really should be, who are we going to sell? And
correct. That's the conversation.
It's not who we're buying. It's not who we're buying. And again, we go back to amortization and PSR and economic losses. Enzo is not a viable sale. Caicedo is not a viable sale. Palmer is. So's Tosin. So's Chalobah and Achimpong. Maybe Andre Santos. These are the players you might be able to make some money on.
Jackson.
Sure. You can make money out of Jackson. Sure. I'm with you on that. Not a lot, but still profitable.
Get into the write-off already. I mean, Mudryk, Jesus Christ.
Impossible. Impossible to get rid of them. Impossible.
And
But then I would ask you this, Bobby. I would say, is it worth them selling players even at a loss to just get some money in the bank?
That's what happens in a liquidation situation where you're just trying to generate cash. You don't care about profits. Right, so you're just selling stuff just to pay bills, keep the lights on, kind of situation.
Sure.
All right, let's keep going. I don't want to depress people too much, but people just need to know where to go find this stuff, right? So sure. 1.4 tells you what you need to know when the media is feeding you the spin. All right, so the next thing we want to do is to scroll down until we find the footnote with the creditors, just so we can see where Aries and those guys are being disclosed. I can't remember the footnote number, but if you keep scrolling, you'll find it. Remember we were talking about what tangible assets, by the way? That footnote just now would have explained it.
That
you just
players,
scroll
right?
over.
When you say tangible
No,
assets, that's intangible.
Correct. Right, but it's not really that important. But just so you know, it's there, right?
Cool. And the tangible assets being,
well, but all right, let's scroll up and see what's in there.
Sure.
Right. So we're talking about the land. Sorry, the buildings, assets.
Presumably, this is relevant to what was the buildings that we bought right by Stamford Bridge?
And even the stadium itself, right? The actual Stamford Bridge Stadium, the CPO owns the pitch, but the actual construction around it is owned by the club, right? So that's what we're talking about.
Sure. Okay, no, I'm with you.
All right. So let's keep going. So we want to find the creditor section. It might be a Brown Note 20 from what I recall. So you got a long way to go. All these are just describing the basis on which they account for stuff. So let's just scroll and scroll. Taxes, yeah, like. Keep going past this section. Yeah, we want to get to, we got. Let's go. All right, so pause there, just scroll up a little bit. This just gives you the breakout of the revenue, okay? So you can see what's from broadcasting, what's from commercial, what's from match day. And again, this is on a group basis, right? So that includes Strasbourg and the women's team.
Sure.
And it shows you where it comes from. So Strasbourg only had 30. So see at the bottom there, they did it by country, United Kingdom and France.
Yes.
So Strasbourg only brought in 33.5 million of revenue. All right, so you can see France there. Okay.
Yep.
And that's down. That's bizarre. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, that doesn't make. Oh, I tell you why. Because
TV.
they had deals that weren't renewed for the French league. That's why they had deals that weren't renewed. So that was just broadcasting all over would have gone down for every French club.
There we go. That's exactly it. All right, let's keep going.
Sure.
Till we get to the creditors. Okay, that's auditors' remuneration. Let's keep an eye out for directors' remuneration so that we can solve that bully £20 million question. There we go.
The directors did not receive any remuneration from the company, nor were they paid for their services as directors of the company by any group or third party. Any appointment of third party remuneration is considered to be immaterial. You see, that's where it still doesn't answer the question, does it? Because it's saying that the directors did not receive anything, but Bowley received his money, in my opinion, well, from what I've heard, not as a director, but as a chairman. So I don't know.
No. There's no distinction. The chairman is. If you go back to the director's report, it lists who the directors are. It doesn't tell you that there's a chairman.
Sure.
So he doesn't get separate compensation as a chairman. He's just a director. Well, the way it works is that when the board meets, they appoint a chairman, right? So he just has that title, but he is a director. And if he was receiving compensation, it would have to be disclosed in Note 8.
Sure.
And it doesn't make sense anyway, right? Because if you were in a pension fund and you see them losing money like that, but the chairman enriching himself, like that just doesn't make sense, right? Nobody does that. So that's why it was always doubtful. But this confirms that Bowley's a director. He's received no compensation. So that 20 million stuff is a myth.
Right. Okay. Well, that's interesting to know.
That's good news.
That's something that's been going around for years. So interesting that Bowley never took any money out.
So Wildstorm, you're spreading a bit of misinformation there, my friend. The chairman is not a paid role. There's no such thing as a chairman, actually. The board elects a chairman when it meets. There's no such formal title.
So this is incorrect.
Absolutely incorrect. It would have to be disclosed in Note 8. Note 8 specifically says there's no compensation. Okay, let's keep going.
Sorry, just one more thing. JC saying if you're looking for salaries of directors employed at Chelsea, you have to look at this is Chelsea statements though, mate. This is Chelsea. That's what we're trying to explain. This is Chelsea.
I think he said that a couple times, man. These are the consolidated accounts. Includes Chelsea. Chelsea is the biggest segment in here. We've already established that 490 million of the revenue is from Chelsea, right? So this includes Chelsea, and if it says there the directors have not received comp, this is what it's saying. Okay, let's keep going.
Sure.
So
Am I scrolling down?
Yeah, I think it's around note 20. Maybe.
Interest payable. Oh, interest on the bank loans. So they paid off. Hang on a second. Is that what they're saying?
Payable. So interest payable.
Sure. Okay.
So they incurred 136 million of interest last year on the PIK and the JP Morgan Bank of America. That's a lot of interest. Our stadium revenue is 80 million. Okay, so we're getting more. We're paying more in interest than we are in gate receipts.
What's our gate receipt?
Around 80 something million.
And in interest, we paid 156 million.
136 interest payable. So interest on bank loans. 136404.
Fucking interest.
Smart.
That's not even the loan.
That's just the interest.
Oh my!
That's the cup. That's an ESAC every year, my friend.
It gets worse and worse, Bobby.
I wasn't even going to point out, but you got a sharp eye.
Well,
but it's interesting
it's
stuff.
Important to know these things. So we're saying, hang on a second, then. So the reason that number's gone up in terms of interest is because presumably they've borrowed more. Am I right in saying that, or is that because they haven't paid some of the loans off, so the interest is just going up anyway?
Exactly. The PIK grows every year, right? Because it never gets repaid, so you're paying interest on last year's interest.
Sorry,
every time. So that's going to keep running.
With the PIK loan, then, I thought that you didn't pay interest until the end, but you're telling me they pay interest all through.
Sorry. Payable. Remember, this thing is showing payable, not paid.
Right.
So it is to be paid.
To be paid. This is due. Okay. So this includes the PIK loans and I presume this doesn't include JP Morgan and Bank of America.
Well, because it's payable, this is I assume that the JP Morgan Bank of America has been paid, so it's not reflected here. So this looks to me like the accrued interest on the Ares loan.
Sure. Okay. Cool. All right. That's fine. Right. That makes sense. That makes sense.
All right. Taxation is boring. Let's keep going. Numbers are small anyway. All right. Intangible assets. These are the players' contracts. Yeah. I mean, like, this doesn't really mean a lot to me, but it shows you what the amortization is. It shows you what any impairment charges are. No. This is a complicated discussion. I would have expected Mudryk to be on here. He certainly needs an impairment charge because nobody is buying him for £40 million or whatever his book value is. But there are accounting rules as to how you calculate the impairment of a player. So we shouldn't get into that now. But
sure.
This is not for me. This is not a meaningful schedule. So let's keep going. Let's keep going. This is all the player stuff. Tangible, this is the fixed assets again, right? So let's just keep going. Now let's keep going. We want to get to, I believe, note 20. So these are all the subsidiaries. And by the way, you should see, this could be interesting. You should see Vivid Seats on here somewhere. Let's see if we see Vivid Seats. Is Vivid Seats on this list?
No.
Okay, these are the subsidiaries. I'm sorry. Let's keep going. This is not a related parties. Vivid Seats must be in a related party note somewhere. My understanding is it's appeared. I think I saw it somewhere in the footnotes. Anyway, let's keep going to note 20. Debtors. So that's what's recoverables. So those are all receivables. Let's just pause here for a second to see if we see.
This is money that owed for players they've sold, correct?
So correct. So that trade debtors that you see there, that should be the player sale proceeds coming in. That's correct. The transfer fees that are owed are the biggest number. The trade debtors number, that 173 million. So let's keep going. Let's go down to note 20. Let's see what's in note 19 first. No, 19 might be the one I'm thinking of. Creditors. Okay. So the trade creditors, again, that should be the unpaid transfer fees, right? So you see 200 and, am I looking at the correct thing? I think that's the number, all right? But again, not very, very interesting per se. The note 20 is the one that we're really interested in, and that's where the Aries debt is. Okay, so you can see that bank loans have gone up to 1.39 billion. And if you scroll down a little bit, you will see some disclosures about the loans. There will actually be a narrative description of the loans. So you can see, just scroll down a little bit. You see that 794 million that's due amongst falling due 2 to 5 years. That is the balance of JP Morgan, Bank of America, that's due next year.
And that's okay. So that's what we were saying, just short of 800 million in total.
Correct.
And that number stays the same because the interest gets paid off anyway. That doesn't go up.
Right. And I said early in the stream that they had 2 million left. Apparently they have what? What's that?
5.6 million.
Some 6 million.
Well, give or take. Yeah.
Right. So that's nothing. Bank loans falling due more than 5 years. That's your Aries balance right there.
It doesn't give you an exact time. It just says more than 5.
Correct. But you can see in the text, it actually tells you when it's due.
The balance sheet, the company has a loan of 595 outstanding. The loan attracts PIK interest about 7.5% above SONIA. Oh, yes, let's explain SONIA. So SONIA is the market rate. Am I right in saying that?
That is the rate at which the UK government borrows money overnight.
And currently,
just every day.
SONIA is around 5%.
It's not that much. It's 3 point something, I believe. I earlier today.
So this is the rate of mortgages and everything like that. All okay, I'm with you. Yes. Okay, so we're looking at roughly a 10% interest rate.
SONIA right now is 3.73%.
Right. Okay. So
you have to add that to the 7.5. See what it reads? The loan attracts PIK interest at 7.5% above SONIA.
Sure.
So SONIA is 3.73%. You have to add 7.5% to that. And then you should see a note there as well about JP Morgan and Bank of America. So at the balance sheet date, subsidiary Blueco 22 Limited has loans of 794.2. Right? It doesn't actually name the banks.
And the Aries loan has to be paid by 2033. And when it comes to JP Morgan, Bank of America, is that the loan that you think they will try to refinance or push back?
No, that was the piece of good news in the Athletic article.
Right.
The Athletic reported that they apparently, from a source close to the club, they have apparently been able to secure the refinancing of that 794.2 million at a lower interest rate. Now, I don't know what at a lower interest rate means. It probably means that the 3.25% is at a tighter spread, but next year we will see what that lower interest rate is, if it is in fact correct. Whenever I see source close to the club, I tend to need to go immediately.
Sure.
Right.
I'm with you. Okay. So we all understand this. Okay. These are the loans. 794 million for JP Morgan and Bank of America. That's not going to change. They just pay the interest off every now and then. But then the 595 million was actually, am I right in saying it started off as, hang on a second.
That's the Aries, right? Aries.
Yeah, so it started off as 410.
That's all they drew down. So remember, it got approved. The Athletic article also explains how the Aries, once it's approved, you just draw down what you need as you go until you hit the limit, right? So last year, they only drew down 410 million.
Right.
So it just climbs up. And right now, it's now up to the 500 million. The 95 million is the accrued interest.
Yes.
Because remember, they're not paying back interest.
I'm with you. Okay.
So that's a tour. That's a tour of the financial statements. We hit the 2-hour mark on the dot. That's what I was hoping to get people oriented about today. Where to find them, how to read them, what to look for. These are the things that I look for when I read these.
So let's explain, because there's quite a few new viewers who've come in from Lewis's stream. Big up to everyone that's new. Me and Bobby have been going into a lot of detail. So let's try and, to make sure I was listening properly, let's see if I understand it well. So Chelsea was bought for 2.5 billion. 900 million of that was Bowley's side. That is equity, which means they own that that portion of Chelsea. What is it? 38%. If I'm not wrong. The 1.6 billion that was provided by Clearlake was not bought as equity. It was bought, it was loaned as a PIK loan, which is the same loan that Aries management also have given us. The reason that Clearlake are currently running the club is because they activated the debt covenant. Covenants.
You have it right. But let's not be so declarative. These are questions. The Athletic raises questions as to whether or not that's debt or equity.
So we don't know if it was debt or equity, but there's
we do know that it's debt, actually, but it raises questions about, why are they presenting themselves as owners if they are in fact lenders?
Yes. So if they were in fact lenders, then what that would mean is that they gave Bowley the money. They said, you run the club. And then the debt covenants, meaning that Bowley spent too much money and there was a certain amount that he wasn't supposed to lose, and he lost more than that amount, gave Clearlake the opportunity to take over the club and run the clubs themselves. This is a question. Yes.
This is a question. Yes.
And so we still have we have a definite payment in kind loan with Aries, but the question is, was there actually another payment in kind PIK loan with Clearlake? And that's why they're running the club now, because they were so unhappy with what Bowley was doing. And there is a possibility that Aries could be in the same position in a number of years' time, and they decide to take over the club as well, because they're not going to get their money back. And so you break it down into 4 layers. Who's getting paid first? Who's getting paid last? First is JP Morgan and Bank of America, 800 mil. Second is Aries Management, 500 mil. Third is Clearlake, 1.6 billion. But they obviously want to have a return on their investment. They want to make money. So that will obviously be more if they can help it. And then Bowley is the last person to get paid, but he's potentially the only one who actually had real equity in Chelsea at the beginning. So, I mean, it's I don't think it's entirely necessarily really important right now that we've found out what's happened with Clearlake, but it gives you a bit of context as to why they decided to take over, because they had that power and they executed. That was the decision they wanted to make on behalf of their investors.
It is good context. I just want to jump in here. It is good context to know who actually owns it, who actually owned it. But why it matters is that money needs to be paid back at a fixed date. So whenever you hear Iqbal here saying, we're here for the long run, well, bullshit, because your fund is a credit fund, which means that there's a fixed date of maturity. There's a fixed date that your investors need to be repaid. So that's why that's important in this instance.
And I just want to find the other bit, which was probably the most significant part of what we've looked at, which is note 1.4, if I'm not wrong. Am I right? 1.4. So when you look, and I'm going to read this one more time because there's a lot of you who haven't heard this, but even if you did hear it, you need to hear it again. Going concern. The financial statements have been prepared on a going concern basis, which the directors consider to be appropriate for the following reasons. The group and company meet their day-to-day working capital requirements from operational cash flows, external loan funding, and owner funding. The directors have prepared cash flow forecast and performed a going concern assessment, which indicate that in both the base case and the reasonably possible downsides, the group and company will require additional funds from the consortium led by Todd Bowley and Clearlake to meet their liabilities as they fall due during the 12-month period from the date of approval of the financial statements, the going concern assessment period. The group prepares and reviews its cash flow forecasts on a regular basis and keeps its parent aware of the various potential funding scenarios. The group has considered various base case and severe but plausible downside cases, with on-pitch performance of the men's football team being a key driver. The ownership group has indicated its intention to continue to make available such funds as are needed by the company during the going concern assessment period. The most significant factor that determines the extent of the financial support requirement is the net impact of future player transfer activity. As with any company placing reliance on its ownership for financial support, the directors acknowledge that there can be no certainty that this support will continue. Although at the date of approval of these financial statements, they have no reason to believe that it will not do so. Consequently, the directors are confident that the company and group will have the sufficient funds to continue to meet their liabilities as they fall due for at least 12 months from the date of approval of the financial statements, and therefore have prepared the financial statements on a going concern basis. Basically, reiterating what we said, the owners know that what we're doing is extremely risky. They understand the downsides, and they've literally admitted. By the way, this is almost like a quote, right, Bobby? What I've just read, it's like a quote, except it's written by someone else. Am I right in saying that?
Sorry, I said what do you mean? This is the directors speaking.
What's that?
These footnotes have been prepared by the directors.
Yes. So the directors have actually they've given this information. This is straight from them, and they've said, listen, we understand that there are a lot of
there's a working capital requirement that they need to sell players to meet operational needs.
The most significant factor that determines the extent of the financial support requirement is the net impact of future player activity. Basically meaning if they don't sell players, we're fucked. And if they do, on a financial level, we'll survive. Is that right, Bobby?
That is absolutely correct. And what people are going to say is, look, this is a required disclosure. I see somebody in the comments with it already. Let's challenge them to go and find this exact disclosure in another club's financial statements. See, there are a lot of lazy takes out there. People think that they understand the disclosure requirements, etc. There's no other club saying that they need to sell players to meet working capital requirements. And if somebody finds it, please let me know.
So what Bobby's saying is that if there are other clubs saying the same thing, then cool. But you haven't seen that from any other club.
I went and checked Newcastle and I couldn't find it. And Newcastle is theoretically dependent on their their owners, right, for their operations.
Sure.
Most clubs are, but none of them are saying we need to sell players to meet working capital needs.
Sure. That's this has been a very insightful stream. I mean, Bobby, you said at the beginning it would be boring. I mean, there was parts of it which are a little bit long, but I suppose you got to kiss a few frogs to get to what you want to see it, and we have, we've got to the nitty gritty of it. If there's any debates now about the numbers or about the situation we're in, there shouldn't be now. There shouldn't be, or at least if there is any questions, now that we should have questions coming out with real intention, because we understand the scenario, we understand the specifics a lot more than we did before. And this is obviously due to the fact that you can just go on Company's House and have a look at all this information. It's all on there. You can see the money that's coming. You can see the money that's come out. You can see everything from a Blueco standpoint, which is what you want to look at, not just Chelsea, Blueco, because if Blueco run out of money, Chelsea run out of money. And so it's all relevant. And that's, I think it's a really damning statement. And, well, I mean, it's good to know what's going on, isn't it? You'd rather be aware of a bad situation than not be aware. And so now we've got a bit more context.
Well, it sets our expectations for the summer, right? Because when you hear all these statements about experienced players and this kind of thing, well, you just have to consider that we have to sell some players to meet our cash flow requirements. And then the question is, what's left afterwards, right? And hopefully as people think about that, they'll be able to analyze what they're seeing in the summer. Maybe there's a secret source of money. Who knows? All right, but it's certainly not disclosed in that footnote 1.4.
Big up to AJ. He says, hi there, guys. For the next protest, huge messages should be directed at the investors, as well as big up to all of you for all the work you're doing. The big work, Blueco out. Thank you very much, AJ. Appreciate the message. I hope that we've answered any questions that you've got. I really do. I know there's some people that are still asking. I mean, some people are asking the same question that they've already asked. I mean, the accounts we've looked at are 100% relevant to Chelsea. This is what Bobby's communicated, and he is not saying things that are not on these documents. We're just reading what's on there. So if anyone thinks it's not true, I don't know what the point of Company's House is. I'm pretty sure this is why you have, company accounts in the first place, so that you're able to review this information and you can make of it what you want, but you can't deny what's there. And there's a hell of a lot there, a hell of a lot. And there's not a lot of positives. I mean, is there any positives we can take from that, Bobby?
Well, we know that Bowley's not getting 20 million a year. So
that's true.
That's useful to know. But I'm struggling after that.
That's true. So Bowley isn't getting paid as a chairman. That was quite insightful. I'm surprised, but I suppose that's a good thing. Yeah, there you go. Okay, well, listen. Big up to everyone. Really appreciate all of you that have jumped on for the stream. If you've watched the whole 2 hours and 13 minutes, I want to say respect to you. If you haven't watched the full stream, it's worth looking at. Honestly, it's worth diving into. This is not a video that can be made quickly. That's why we do it live. Yeah, this is a video that, just like the first episode me and Bobby did, I was aware that it was going to take a bit of time. And this is not the end either. This is part 2 of almost a 4-part series. So we've got another episode with Bobby coming on. What's the next step?
So I think there are 2 articles which I'll share with you. I think we do need to recap on the Athletic article. That was really insightful.
Sure.
What are the new things we've understood from that? How do we calculate the amount of cash that the owners might have available? How do they come up with that 650 million? So it'd be good to walk through that. But then there was another deep dive into Aries and its structures, because what everybody's going to want to ask is, well, what happens next, right? What happens if Aries takes over? How can Aries take over? So there's another article as well that we can go through to really understand the mechanisms that are in the PIK loan agreement, which allows Aries to convert its debt into equity and therefore control the club and put it up for sale, as we are seeing them do with John Textor and Leon, right? Sure. What mechanisms allow them to do that? And then what will be useful for you, I think, because you're constantly quoting that £9 billion sale price number. I think we should actually work that as a live example to do our own valuation based on that balance sheet that we just saw.
Sure. That would be very good. The more information, the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. Big up to Wildstorm. He's got a super chat. He says, right, go to company's house, Chelsea FC, 6th of January 2020. Have you looked at this, Bobby?
I don't know. What was there in on that day? What was the significance of it? What is Wildstorm saying about that date?
Information. Let's have a look. Chelsea FC Holdings Limited. What was the date again, Bobby?
He has their 6th of January 2020. I don't know. That's pre-Clear Lake. Like, is this a troll?
Filing history.
I mean, thanks for the money if you're trolling, but why are we looking at January 2020?
I don't understand.
Wildstorm? I don't know what that means to him. It means nothing to me.
January 2020. There's
that was
nothing.
Like peak COVID, isn't it?
Oh, hang on a sec. What did he say? The 10th of January?
6th of January 2020.
There's nothing. I'm just going to share my screen just to prove that.
He's saying Chelsea FC Holdings.
31st of July 2020.
Just make sure it's not 22 hole code, all right? He's talking about Chelsea FC.
No, I'm talking about Chelsea FC. This is
okay,
Chelsea
cool.
FC
Oh, there we go. Yeah, all right, yeah. So yeah, well, Storm, we're not sure what you're referring to, mate.
No, there's nothing there, mate. There's nothing there. Thanks anyway. Sorry, I can't help. But listen, Bobby, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, and there's more to come. There's more to come. So listen, I appreciate your time, Bobby. I don't know what the time is. You're in Bermuda, right?
Yeah. So I'm 4 hours behind you, so I'm good. I'm just looking forward to dinner now.
You're all right. You're absolutely fine. I thought you'd be longer. I thought you'd be like 7 hours.
No. I'm in the middle of the Atlantic, so I'm closer than New York.
Fair enough. Well, listen, Bobby, really appreciate your time, and I look forward to setting up another conversation next week. Hopefully, if we can find a time that works for both of us. Big up to everyone that's been watching as well. Smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you watch the first episode of this series if you haven't already, because it will probably make what we've spoken about today a lot easier to understand. That was the truth about how Blueco funded the purchase of Chelsea. And then coming up, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about everything else, and we're going to talk about the next steps from here on. But all the best, guys, and we will catch up very, very soon.